Hey everyone, this is Arabella back for another episode of In My Musical Opinion. This time I'm joined by guest speaker Quinn, and Quinn is also a teaching instructor with the studio. But I want to ask Quinn more about his life as a college student and how he's navigating that alongside his music. And with that, Quinn, will you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi. My name's Quinn. I'm just about to finish up my last year of college. I've been doing music pretty much my entire life through middle school, high school, now, hopefully into the far, far future. It's what I find the most joy in, in terms of all the different things that I've tried throughout my life. And it's really what I want to continue doing for the rest of my life, for my job, for my passion. It's everything to me.
That's awesome. And when did you start playing?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I started playing drums when I was about 6 years old. My grandfather, he was super into music. He was in a Zydeco band for a while. He played trombone. He was learning mandolin, and he started taking me to drum lessons. And I abandoned the lessons pretty quick, but not the drums. I kept playing those up until now. My uncle gave me my first guitar when I was 12, so I started picking that up. And throughout all of that, singing had been something that I really enjoyed. I don't think I ever really thought about my singing as a discipline until much more recently. It just was something that was very like human and natural to me. The instruments were more of, like studying, practicing, doing all of like the more rigorous, intentional stuff. But yeah, singing until recently was more of, an intuitive thing. And then as the years go on, I realize, hey, this is something I really need to be studying and working on intentionally as well. And I've noticed a lot of growth in myself since I started taking that aspect of my music a lot more seriously.
That's awesome. And for those who don't know, and you can see Quinn's bio on our website as well, but Quinn's primary schooling is in instrumental music, guitar mostly. Is that correct?
Yes.
Quinn joined our team, though, as a singing instructor because he had something very unique to offer in that he sings for a hard rock metal band. And so he had vocal distortion knowledge in a way that a lot of us who've studied classical music or even contemporary singing didn't. So he brought something new to the table. But you didn't learn that at school, right, Quinn? How did you learn that?
So this all started in, I think, sixth grade. I had a friend who played guitar. He wanted to start a band. So a bunch of us just went to his house and started jamming. And he took us upstairs and he was like, hey, check out this really sick band I just found out about. And it ended up being Slipknot, who are right now at least one of the biggest, metal acts in the world. And I had never heard of this before. I had never heard anybody sing or play in this style. And honestly, it scared me. Like the music video kind of terrified me. I was like, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. It's gross. But over the next like few weeks, I found myself looking up the song, listening to it again, and really finding a sort of catharsis in the intensity of the music. And we ended up deciding to take our little, like elementary, middle school band in a heavier direction. And we ended up covering some metal songs that had screaming or distortion in them. And he asked me, hey, is this something you've ever done before? And I said, no, I have not, but I'll give it a shot. Obviously, I wasn't very good at it. I was a sixth grader, but it's something that I found I really enjoyed doing.
Hmm.
It, in my experience, it has a lot less pressure mentally and emotionally than singing melodically would. I've done melodic singing in, musicals at my high school. I've sung for a couple different, cover sets at bars and stuff like that. But something about the harsh vocals, there's this, raw emotionality to it that I connected with even at that super young age. And after being in that project and being exposed to that world of music, that kind of took over my life all through high school. I was, the metal kid with long hair and the t-shirts with the logos that are impossible to read. And that's kind of continued up until now. Obviously, I've branched out into more styles and trying to round out my musical experience, but that's always been like my heart and soul is heavy music like that.
I have so much to ask on this, but for our listeners, we're going to record a second podcast right after this about this kind of singing and Quinn's journey with that. So I'm going to divert us a little bit. You are clearly someone from a very early age, loved music, loved
Yes.
the exploration of it. Let's talk about the college component of it, though, for a second, because our podcast is worldwide and that it's accessible to everybody. But our clientele as a studio, a lot of them being in the Boston area, are college students. And you just heard Quinn say, I'm a learner, I teach, and I'm in a band. How do you navigate all of that? That's a lot.
Yeah. It can definitely be very straining, just in terms of what I'm able to commit to, how much energy I'm able to put into things. Music school specifically can burn you out really, really, really fast because it reaches a point where the music isn't for you. It's not about your own artistic expression. You're doing it because you have to do it. And a lot of people that I've talked to while at school have a big problem with that. They've found that they aren't really connecting with the music that they're having to make and take part in. And that kind of saps some of the joy from it. I think I've found a way to kind of get around that by taking what I have to do and putting more of what I would be doing already into those assignments. So if there's an assignment where, hey, you have to write a song, then I'll write a song for the assignment and then I'll give it to my band so that it kind of, one piece of work can add to my life in more than one area. Scheduling also gets super difficult. I'm taking a full course load right now, which means my weeks are pretty much packed. And the only time I have to myself are weekends and nights, which is kind of convenient considering most concerts and shows are at night. So I can go after class, I can go after work, I can rehearse then too with the rest of the people in my band. A couple of the members in the band that I'm playing with right now work full-time jobs. And that definitely, that puts a lot more strain on the whole project itself because I'm in school, other members are in school, other people are working 40 hours a week. We really only have one night a week to regularly rehearse, and then people have to schedule their work around when we have shows. Because when it comes to something collaborative like that, there's so many people with individual schedules that have to line up. Every member from every other band has to be available that night. So that is a kind of, when you book a show, it's like, make time for that. Cut out the other things for that one night. And it's definitely tough. It requires planning things out weeks, months in advance. But personally, I take so much joy and fulfillment out of all of the things that I'm involved in, whether it's teaching, learning, playing, performing, writing, recording, all of that, that it none of it really feels like that much of a burden. It's just, dang, I wish I had more time to do all of this stuff. There's only so many hours in a day, but scheduling months out helps.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I have to say, from my perspective, from the studio's perspective, one thing I was really impressed with right off the bat when you were applying to the job, when we did our interview, we always ask people that are joining our team, what's your goal for teaching? Is it, and it's different for everyone, right? Is it that you love teaching and that is what you want to do as a career, like more from the job perspective into a career perspective? Or is it that you see yourself as a performer career-wise and you love teaching? We don't hire anyone here who doesn't love teaching, but you see it as a way to support a larger picture. And you were very open in that, hey, my goal is this band, and I will be the best teacher I can be for you, but this is my availability and I this is what my goals are. And that made it really easy for me to be like, great, let's work together, because I knew exactly what you were needing as a teacher. I knew what I was needing as a studio, and that matchup was so easy.
I'm really glad. That's really good to hear.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's been such a pleasure, Quinn. And I have to say, you would think that if you're listening, well, you might say, well, that makes sense. Of course, like it has to be a harmony between those two, but it doesn't always happen, right?
yeah,
People sometimes think they won't get the job if they say that they won't, that teaching is not their number one career, or that their time needs to be allocated a certain way. And at least as a studio owner here, I don't think that's plausible to have every teacher with the same goal.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, teaching's hard. Like the way that you've learned something and understand it might be completely different and completely separate from the way that somebody else might learn it and understand it. And that it can be really frustrating. I think what keeps me going is just, the hope that, hey, what I'm doing right now means that more people are able to do what I want to do. And that's inspiring to me. Like I want to see more people feel like they can, hey, I can start a band myself. I can start playing these shows because I feel like I have the ability to now. And that sort of end goal is really what, keeps me passionate about teaching my students and helping them in any way that I can.
This episode is sponsored by ABS. Together, we are redefining what it means to be a musical community. Rather than a single central studio, our presence is woven into the fabric of our city. You'll find us in boutique practice rooms strategically placed at the heart of the action, from Rock City, Allston to across from the Symphony in Back Bay. We gather in local pubs, breweries, at local open mics, channeling our resources into getting singers out of the practice room and onto stages in the greater Boston area. 100%. You and I are going to inspire different learners. A lot of the learners that come work with me are super passionate about theory, super passionate about pedagogy, and maybe their goal is that they'd like to be a teacher one day or be in entrepreneurship. Like there's a way that we align, whereas I think a lot of the people that you work with are like, either I love this type of music, or I want to be a performer. I want to be in a band. How many songwriters, Quinn, have you worked with recently
Many.
where,
I think very many.
yeah, and it's been my great pleasure to say to someone, I can't do that, but you know who can? Quinn, and he's on our team. So I think
Thank
that's
you.
the benefit of working in a team. Um, I have a follow-up question for you about something you said, though.
For sure.
You talked about music school being a little bit of a struggle, in that the music stops being for you and more for them, the school, or for a grade or for a project. What
Mhm.
would you to say to someone who maybe is unsure about going to music school because of that? Should they not do it?
I don't want to say that anybody shouldn't go to music school if they feel like that's really what they want to do. If you want to dedicate your life to that, I'm not going to pretend that a lot of the stuff they teach at music school isn't available completely for free on the internet.
Mm.
But I feel like finding that information for yourself and not having anyone that really has lived that life to guide you in what to look for, it can be really easy to miss a lot of really important stuff that can help you in a career. If you, any listener, feels like you have the drive to chase this, learn everything you need to learn on your own volition, then maybe music school might not be for you. Maybe you can figure it out on your own. There's so many people that have done that. But I will say that having someone there helping you out, being like, hey, I've been in this situation before. Here's a step-by-step guide on how not to, screw yourself over in business, how to make sure that the songs you're writing appeal to people other than yourself. That can be super helpful as well. So I think it's about determining how much of your life you want to dedicate to this, as well as how confident are you that you could find this information on your own? Because it is out there, but being able to find it and really absorb it is a completely different conversation.
Yes. And I would say from my experience, I really debated what I wanted to do going from high school. And I was in a position where my support system really sort of put a question mark by the music school, and not for the traditional reasons of don't do it because the job security, don't do it because of X, Y, and Z, like your typical responses. It was, well, if you're not sure, then music school will be really hard
Yeah.
because it's an all-in experience. So maybe do something where you need to go to school, like a licensure degree or something where you can't get that experience without the school system itself, and then you can go to music school. So what I ended up doing is I went to Northeastern and got a communication and Spanish degree, which also in some ways sounds very nebulous, but the idea was it was wrapped into like an international business communication thing, right? There was some guidance there. And then simultaneously, my senior year, I did a continuing ed program at Berkeley, their vocal styles program. And I really liked doing both. Like, I kind of miss the fact that in now I don't have like the double school experience because I got so many different perspectives.
Yeah. That sounds really valuable.
Absolutely. Both experiences were.
Yeah. And like I have classmates that are, in their 30s, 40s. They went to school for something else, got a job in whatever their chosen industry was, pursued that, and then realized, hey, I want to do this music thing. I want to really chase after it. So they came back to school like much later in their life. I think something about, music and the arts, it seems more reasonable to come back to it later in life than it would for maybe a different career. Like, I don't know. I think it might be easier for someone to say, I'm going to go to music school at 45 after being married, rather than I'm going to go to, I'm going to go be a communications major at USC 45 years into their life. There's something about it that you can come back to it. You can like rediscover that love for it. And I think that's really cool.
Definitely. And if our listeners have heard our past podcasts, something I talk about a lot is that I started with really primarily teaching what I call senior learners, which is post-retirees and up. And I think it's because through the schooling I had outside of music school, I had experience with that population. So it let me do things in music that maybe I couldn't otherwise. And music's kind of like that. Your whole experience is school.
Yeah, pretty much. Like the stuff that you do outside of school still somehow plays a role in how your school is going. Like that's my experience going to music school. But like I started my band, and you'd think that that's, completely separate from classes, but it kind of creeps its way in. You take a business class, and then you go to an office hour and you're asking your professor, hey, here's my band's link tree. Here's our Instagram. What can we do to, like increase our, our following, advance ourselves in the industry? And it kind of, it becomes a support network for whatever project you're a part of outside of that school. And that's something that, especially more recently, I've really come to appreciate about going to a college that's so focused on the world that I've entrenched myself in.
This episode is sponsored by Piano for the Vocalist. Piano for the Vocalist is your ultimate resource for unlocking the skills to self-accompany with confidence. This largely free program is focused on teaching singers to use collaborative piano techniques for vocal performance rather than traditional piano skills, empowering you to accompany yourself with ease. Absolutely. And what I want to make clear to the listener is we are not saying don't do it.
Oh,
Clearly,
absolutely not.
we both have had education in school systems and elsewhere where we have invested in our music education, whether it be for me for the continuing ed program. I was also a music minor at Northeastern, so even though I didn't major in it or go to a music school, like I was still in music classes. Quinn's about to graduate from music school. So we found value there. There's
Absolutely.
nothing like that network of being in a community where everyone relates on that level. No matter what background they come from, everyone kind of gets at the end of the day that music's beautiful, it's fun, it's also kind of hard.
Yeah.
So having that support system and network, invaluable. But this
Absolutely.
is to say if you are a college age person in the area and you're interested in music, it is not the only option for you. In fact, you could even do it simultaneously with other things.
Absolutely.
How do you think teaching has affected your learning in a school system? Do you think it's changed the way you thought about projects?
Maybe not the way that I've thought about the projects that I'm doing. Um, right now I'm working as a vocal coach. I'm not really assigning big projects. Maybe I'll ask a student, they'll come in with some lyrics and they'll be like, what can I do with these? And I might give them some suggestions like, hey, like these words that you've written kind of fit into this, syllabic rhythm. Try doing something with that. And in my experience, it's more about encouraging their own exploration. College is different. Professors have, requirements that they have to hit. It's still an accredited college. Um, so there's definitely other things that the Berkeley professors need to be worried about rather than just helping us individually advance our own art. But I think it makes me a little bit more understanding of those professors and the reasons that they teach the way they teach. I know a lot of people might be like, hey, I really want a lot more one-on-one attention from this professor. And that's completely reasonable. But, realistically, they're teaching a class of 20 kids and they're teaching that class 5 times a week. So it can definitely be harder on that scale to really connect with your individual students rather than like the way you and I teach, which is normally one-on-one lessons. You have an hour just to yourself when we can work on just you. Not to say that the professors at music school aren't willing to do that with you. I would say I've definitely found a lot of value in making an extra effort to reach out, making sure the teachers that I really feel I can get a lot from know me, know my name, know what I can do and what I can't do, and getting that one-on-one feedback from them. But you have to look for it because no one's going to offer that experience to you. You kind of have to demand it in that college scenario, at the very least.
One thing that I debate in AVS is whether or not to have a set curriculum. I've worked for other music schools that have, and there are a lot of benefits to that. There's also a lot of benefit to not having that, and let me explain a little bit further. Curriculums, I think, are really important for schools, like colleges in that context, because you have to have everyone graduating at a certain level
Yeah.
because it's accredited.
Yeah.
But when you come for private lessons, I don't want people to feel boxed into something because a lot of times that's why someone takes private lessons is to have a different avenue for learning.
Yeah.
The other thing I think happens a lot is if curriculums are done right, they should be frameworks. And therefore, I'll start with my fear. and then I'll go to my disclaimer. My fear of putting in a curriculum is that we start to teach to it instead of teaching to the person. However, if a curriculum is good, it should be a framework anyway, which should help guide the teacher to teach that individual person.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? You're the one in the room. Well, I'm teaching too, but you see a lot of clients face-to-face, private lessons. What do you think?
Yeah. When possible, I would much prefer to work with a student on a much more, personally tailored level. If there were a set curriculum, like, hey, we're going to be learning this day, maybe that's not what a student really wants or needs to be working on right then. And that's honestly a problem with the bigger music school that I've heard a lot of other students talking about. Like, say there's a class in music production. I take a lot of classes like that. There's going to be some people in that class that have been doing that for years. They know what to do, they know what they're talking about, and they need guidance on how to bring it to the next level. The person sitting right next to them might never have touched Pro Tools a single time in their life. And it's the job of the professor to, I don't mean this in a totally negative way because it's still beneficial, but it's their job to help kind of the lowest common denominator of experience, to make sure that the person with the least experience gets as much as everyone else. And basing it on that sort of curriculum, I feel if someone's in a different place, then it might not help them as much as it would the person that's just getting started. And they would rather spend their time focusing on much more like detailed and intricate aspects of the field that they're already experienced in, rather than a crash course in this is how you add a compressor to a track.
Definitely. I have two very close mentors of mine, and they adamantly disagree on this. So I will leave it here. One of them says, I teach a methodless method. And he is all about spontaneity and listening and being in the moment. The other mentor says, how can you have a replicable, consistent experience for the customer week after week, teacher after teacher, if you don't have a framework in place? With the caveat of you should have good curriculums and good teachers, that good curriculums do not replace good teachers. So I think that's for the listener to decide ultimately. And it's something we go back and forth on a lot. But I'm interested to know your thoughts. So if you have them, send us an email or comment, and it'll be sort of churning for us as we go.
Yeah.
I want to turn to learning now something that you haven't had a curriculum with, haven't had direct schooling with. How do you learn something that school doesn't directly teach? And that is metal singing. But I'm going to pause us here and start again so that we have another episode for everyone to come back to. That way, as a listener, you're not just sitting listening to us chat here. So we will be back quite soon.